Hello Canada, welcome back to another edition of the Canadian Citizen Journal. I'm your host, alias the Guy. Well, we got a few things we're going to weave our way through here today. We're going to do this Polyev presser that he had, and through it, like normal, we're just going to kind of expose a bunch of realities. And what a lot of people aren't aware of is, well, the Parti Québécois, the actual separatist party in Quebec, is, well, they're knocking off seats one by one. They have just won their third seat by a pretty large margin. Now, a lot of people are saying that they could actually successfully secede before the West. Now, I'm not going to say whether or not that's gonna happen, because you'd have to be kind of a, Nostradamus to be able to actually pinpoint that. But what I am gonna get to is how this will be great for Canada. This will be great. A lot of us Westerners, well, for the last 20 some odd years, have been waiting to, don't let the door hit you on your way out. But everybody in their right mind, anybody who does any research, anybody who does, can do basic math, knows, well, they can't afford to. But what it does do is it gives a proportionate amount of power back to the country as a whole. Now, yes, there's still going to be a huge voting demographic that will control the outcome. And yes, they are definitely still a major liberal socialist stronghold. But with the falling numbers in media right now, with the crushing tariffs that are happening on pretty much all sectors across the board, but the reality that is just about to kick Ontario in the teeth for, well, all of those liberal fascists, or just brainwashed liberals, card holders, won't vote for anything but a liberal. This is how people like Hitler took power, right? Just ignorance, sheer ignorance. These people are starting to wake up and realize this government is crushing them. And the media ain't helping, obviously. They're just lying through their teeth, because they're not telling you what independents like myself do. We actually expose the truth. So sorry. Just the truth, just the facts. Oh, see if I can hold this frog back today. Now, let's just kind of get started with Pierre, and we're going to weave right through a whole pile of what's going on today and end off with this Quebec separatism, and we'll discuss it as we move forward. Here we go, Pierre.
But before we get started, I speak on behalf of all Canadians when we lock arms in solidarity with all of our fellow Canadians who are facing evacuations as a result of wildfires that are striking so many communities across this country. I want to thank the first responders, the military members, and all others who are chipping in to help out, to protect property and people, and to fight these fires. And Conservatives call on the federal government to offer any support that either local communities or provinces are seeking in order to combat this continued menace. People across the country are suffering with this, but here in the prairies, of course.
Now, the Conservatives years ago were trying to push through funding, especially after the turd promised he was going to spend hundreds of millions of dollars just before an election on new water bombers and training personnel. Here's today's Liberals.
firefighting and with delivery of services as well. So really,
just listen carefully. It's the same party. Nothing's changed.
Katie, our top priority, not just in these jurisdictions, but across the country, is to make sure that Canadians are kept safe.
So those are requests in this moment from 3 different provinces. They're all very different requests. I'm very curious, even though it's not new for the federal government to step in and assist with this, is this really the new normal?
I think what we're seeing, Katie, really because of the effects of climate change, drought, hot, dry conditions on the ground, what we're seeing is this likely is the new normal, that there will continue to be devastating wildfires across the country. And
the new normal. Where have we heard that before? It was really abused during the Wuhan, but I only know one party that has been repeating that for the last 9 years. That would be the libtards. When the reality is,
Now is John Hagee, who is the Newfoundland Minister of Justice and Public Safety. Minister, I have to ask you, can I get your reaction as the Minister of Public Safety and Justice to talk about a man who has been arrested and is expected to appear in court for intentionally trying to set brush fires? A very dangerous prospect, it sounds like, if it is true. What's your reaction to that happening in your province?
In a way, disbelief. I mean, really, we've been in this situation, which is an abnormally bad forest fire season. The province is a tinderbox for some time. And we have, by and large, had an extremely good response from Newfoundlanders and Labradorians, and they have been careful. And then to find someone who is going out and doing this, I mean, it's nuts, basically. I cannot fathom it.
Yeah.
Water bombers and other aircraft tackled the Martin Lake fire in central Newfoundland. The main highway closed, flames just hundreds of meters away. People are stuck on both sides.
There was talks of the road being closed and all weekend, and we didn't really bother it because it was talks and it didn't close, and yesterday we got stranded.
In St. John's, a thick blanket of smoke from a wildfire dangerously close to the city, forcing part of a nearby suburb to evacuate, nearly 20,000 more on notice.
It's looking bad anyway, right, you know.
Including 97 residents of this retirement community. They're getting ready to leave at any moment.
Well, they put it on the bed and packed it in a little bag, all ready to go.
We range from confident and prepared to high anxiety, so I fluctuate between the two.
Adding to that anxiety, police are investigating 4 small brush fires in downtown St. John's. They say they were intentionally set. A male suspect is being pursued.
Knock it off. There's no need for this right now, and adding this much extra worry to people in the city and tying up resources that can be much better used in other places.
Now, there has been 0 lightning. 0. Nada. Zilch. Occurring in all 3 of these provinces. Nada. Liberal mentality. Liberal mentality.
Do you see it as a federal government responsibility to ensure that some provinces that might not have the resources they need versus other provinces, is it the federal government's job to step in and maybe top up those resources so perhaps those provinces that might not be as equipped and ready for wildfire season are ready to go?
Yes, Katie, and it's a good point. It's actually exactly the way emergency management works at the present time. And so once the resources of the province or territory are exhausted, it's at that point that they call on the federal government for help. And so we can provide that help, in the middle of a situation, as we have been doing, but we also need to assist communities in working on the resilience piece so that when next year's wildfire season comes along, our communities are a lot better equipped to handle those situations.
Nothing's changed. It's the same party.
It's clear we need more people and more resources to fight these wildfires and keep communities safe.
Keep communities safe!
So that's exactly what we're ready to deliver. A re-elected Liberal government will invest $500 million ahead of the next fire season for the firefighters and equipment provinces need. To begin with, we'll train at least 1,000 more firefighters in communities across the country who'll be able to mobilize right away when a major burn starts. We know communities could have used more hands this year, so when next year comes around, this training means teams will be ready and complete.
What's it say on the bottom? Training 1,000 firefighters. Yepers. Hundreds of millions of dollars promised. Yepers. And guess what? The media pushed this. The leftist propaganda arm pushed this. Why? Well, let me show you.
Canadians know the choice isn't between the economy and the environment. The choice is between a government that gets it and will act on it, or parties that won't and can't. I'm asking you to stand with us and vote for real, ambitious leadership, for a clean, protected environment, for good jobs, for strong health care, for affordable homes. Whether you mail in your ballot or head to the polls in person, make sure you make your voice heard.
Yeah, suckers. All of you brainwashed people out there. You have literally screwed Canada to the hooch. And you know what? I think it's a good thing. You know what? It's a good thing because this is what the West needed in order for us to finally realize that we have been falling off the cliff for a generation or more. They don't care about us. We've been the most abused part of Canada since its creation. They have purposely abused, stomped, done everything possible to stop any type of, well, Western freedom. I guess out west we value freedom a lot more than the East Coast or the Central Ontario Quebecers or the West Coast. Why is it always that the rural areas, the ones who deal with nature, live in nature, the ones who are usually the brightest, the most ingenious, hardest working, grassroots, tightest rural families and communities, closest to their religions, why is it always those communities that get stomped on but are always voting conservative? There's only one exception, and that's when you get up into the very remote northern areas where all they have is brainwash television, the Canadian Brainwash Corporation. So all they hear is lies. So I can't necessarily blame them because they don't know. They don't know. They don't get the truth. Now with this digital age, they saw this. The government saw this. This is why they started to put the whole Harms Act and all the rest of these censorship bills through, with the cape covering the reality under the guise of child protection. Bullcrap. Because they know if the truth gets out, Canada could have saved itself. But guess what? It's too late. It's too late.
People across the country are suffering with this, but here in the prairies, of course, in the last 48 hours, people have had a new problem, and that is that the Chinese government has announced yet another unfair round of tariffs, this time charging canola seed. They've already gone after oil and meal. And this is, of course, another unfair attack on our Western producers, who, many of whom were having a fantastic growing season and looking forward to a bumper crop. That crop is now facing tariffs from one of our biggest customers. These tariffs are unfair and unjustified, and we lament the fact that Mark Carney has been so silent and so weak, failing to stand up for our farmers against these tariffs. Meanwhile, Carney continues to provide a $1 billion taxpayer-backed loan for BC Ferries to buy Chinese-made vessels. Can you imagine that? The sign of weakness that Carney is sending to the dictatorship in Beijing. You tax and tariff our farmers, and we'll give you a $1 billion loan to create jobs in your country. That kind of weakness has led to failure after failure. Remember, Mark Carney promised that he was an international man of mystery who was going to negotiate deals and end tariffs. Well, what's the result been so far? Let's start south of the border. Since Prime Minister Carney took office, the Americans have doubled tariffs on Canada, while they signed deals with Europe, Japan, and other countries. They have increased penalties and increased the number of tariffs. Meanwhile, Mark Carney has made concession after concession, removing the digital services tax and counter tariffs while getting absolutely nothing in return.
Oh, but he did get lots in return, because he has stocks and shares in these companies. If you're a new subscriber or a new viewer, I urge you, please like, share, and subscribe. Hit the notification bell and check out the previous episodes. I show all the paperwork. I show where all of this profit goes. We now have the most corrupt prime minister in the history of our nation. Compromised in every aspect of his life. There is not a single decision that will be made, that has been made, that doesn't profit him and his shareholders and banker buddies.
He sent his ministers to Mexico to try and get a bilateral deal with them. The Mexicans send the Liberals packing. Yeah, he's done photo ops in Europe, but he hasn't got any deals, while the Americans have signed a deal to sell $750 billion of their energy products to the Europeans. Not a single dollar of European commitment to buy Canadian energy. It seems like since Prime Minister...
Now, once again, I'm going to say it, previous episodes, there's a great documentary out there called Over the Barrel. I urge you to watch it. If not, you can watch how I break down the logistics of it in the 2-part series I did a few days ago. The Liberal Party has weakened Canada to the point where we are now we're being picked apart. Canada is dead. It's gone. All of this talk of national pride is a farce. It's propaganda. You go out to the prairies, you don't see very many Canadian flags, Parliament buildings. Most people got rid of them and are running their provincial flags. Go to Quebec. Do you see any Canada flags? Lots of Quebec flags. Elbows Up destroyed our nation. Propaganda by their masters, the Liberal Party, have completely destroyed our nation. We are at our weakest point in our entire history. Trump knows this. He's a businessman. And the people who helped put him in power, the oil and gas industry, they were the ones, through GMOs, through NGOs, I should say, and all of these fake, green, non-profit organizations that were shutting us down from getting any of our resources to market and only allowing our resources to go to the States at huge discounts, we don't profit from. We lose 60 to 80% profit off of our oil. Gone. It all goes down to the States. These same people are standing behind Trump right now. Do you really think the States gives a rat's ass about Canadians as being Canadians? No. It's profit. And they watched as our idiocracy followed every single stupid, uneducated decision made by the children in the Liberal Party. They destroyed us.
Carney took office, it has been American tariffs up and Liberal elbows down. We're seeing a back down and a failure. But we take no delight in this because as Carney fails abroad, Canadians pay the price at home.
This is a former Liberal. Dan Mateague is a true Liberal. He is the original. He is what a lot of Western Canadians saw and voted for in the past because, well, the ideas he had made sense. Back when Liberals were a true Liberal party. He's one of the many who media doesn't talk about or give the time of day to that fled with the socialist takeover that started to happen in, 2010, 2012. And by 2014 and 15, they were fleeing because they saw what the Liberal Party had become. And people like him have been trying to warn the so-called Liberal cardholders that party doesn't exist anymore. If ever there was anybody that could show you that the New Conservatives are actually a Liberal Conservative party, Dan Mateague is that man. Listen to him talk.
Donate, because Dan Mateague is my guest. He knows government. He's been there as an MP for 18 years. You've worked with government since you're knee-high to a grasshopper. And it's phenomenal when this became public, and still many people don't know about it unless you read Blacklock's or something else, which is making it public, because the Star, the Globe, they don't want to write about this, or CBC, that we are financing the Chinese military, and the Prime Minister's around saying, I'm going to make jobs, get big industry. We could make ships here in Canada. We have the technology, we have the people, we have the minerals. What goes on in government, how they make these stupid decisions, and ministers say, we had no idea. Is there one official who can say, here's $1 billion without telling a minister?
You really wonder how your country is run and why maybe explains the massive deficits.
Come on, tell me.
It's never been like this. We've never had a situation where governments weren't accountable, much less clued out when it came to these big decisions that embarrass us internationally, but also leave Canadians on the hook. You know, we used to build ships in this country. I mean, my goodness, Irving, the Davie Shipyard, take your pick. And on the West Coast as well, Comox and those places, very well known. We've been doing it for a couple hundred years.
Yes.
The fact that we didn't and that we thought we'd go the easy route, the cheap way, maybe like EVs, we should get their EVs as well, sourced from China, and stop the tariffs on our canola farmers. But we're doing this because there has to be someone else giving salutary support to China, maybe a nod to them for some other reason. I'm not sure, but I am convinced that if it took the House of Commons committee and a 5-4 vote to force the government to open up as to what was going on. I think there's conflicts that are going to be raised about Premier Eby of British Columbia and the NDP.
He said I knew nothing about it.
Yeah, right, of course. It seems everyone's saying the same thing, but it's a deal that was etched in stone. You have to ask yourself, how did this happen? Who negotiated behind the scenes?
And the committee of elected people, well, I'm glad to see elected people getting in there, said we are ordering these materials out.
Yep.
And they did the same to Trudeau when he was Prime Minister. Trudeau said, I want to just stop in Parliament.
Yeah, well,
he never revealed anything. So, but it's not very illustrative when you don't hear about that committee meeting in the popular press, because they aren't going to write about it because they're paid for by the PMO.
Exactly.
I mean, it's like Pravda.
Yeah. You know, Stephen, I used to do 20, 30 interviews every day. CTV, Global, CBC, didn't matter. SRC, RDI, whatever. I used to do on gasoline and on other issues related to that. I might get one regional a day if I'm lucky. The media has become totally ineffectual in grabbing what is important to Canadians, the cost of living. But
is that because
importantly,
they're told what to report?
They're told what to report, and more importantly, the bias in the agenda is there. China gets a pass, green and net zero gets a pass. Everything to do with what we've been fantasizing for the past 10 years that has brought the country down several notches is not allowed to be discussed, including migration.
Oh, there's another day for that one. Dan, thank you very much.
That is a true liberal. Ran as a liberal, won as a liberal, sat as a liberal, worked his way, became ministers. That is a liberal. That is a Canadian. Sounds a lot like every single conservative. Interesting, hey? The entire swing, because of the media, the lies and the propaganda, have actually pulled and ripped apart the real conservatives and swung them closer and closer left. Now, conservatives, this is my opinion, and let me know how you feel, but conservatives are actually the centrist party. Libertarians are definitely more right-wing because of the way we feel towards freedoms. But for some reason, there's always this weird classification where conservatives are far right because of the religious fundamentalism that was part of that conservative party, how they really did hold the religious values and want to keep those parts as law, which, don't forget, our nation was built on Christian values. No other religion. Christian values. All part of that entire sector, the Protestant, Catholic, Christian, there's the frog again. So they were the centrists because the country was founded upon it. And then once all of a sudden these socialist parties, and through a couple of nasty wars that people didn't actually realize the carnage and loss of life that was going on, the starvation and persecution, more and more schools were adapting to this. They were allowing teachers to come in and promote this ideology. Conservatism got pushed over and then was called this far right. And now conservatism is not right at all. Conservatism is actually liberalism. Think about all of when every single conservative stood up in the House of Commons on a vote to allow no minimum mandatory requirement for the tax dollars of Canadians to pay for unlimited abortions. That entire premise of the Conservatives being any part of a centrist or right-leaning party completely dissolved. And in doing so, now I'm libertarian. You want to get as many abortions as you want, you go right on ahead. Who am I? That's your freedom. That's your right. But don't force the taxpayers to pay for it. Because in doing so, you get what's going on in Canada today. The same thing that India and a lot of these other countries suffer from, which is, well, the removal of the female from ever being born because they prefer male. There's power in males. There's value in these societies in males. I don't see any logic in this at all, especially as a taxpayer. And all of this talk, women's rights. What women? When you're allowing people on tax dollars to, well, systematically remove the females from ever being born because they're waiting until they have a boy. These are things that mainstream should be talking about, but they don't. Because they don't want the people to know the reality, and they don't want them to see the truth. And they love your tax dollars because it pays for them to have the airwaves, just like Dan has just stated. Now, let's just dabble a little wee bit into what Dan, and the great host here, by the way, this is the LeDrew Show. Make sure you follow this guy. As always, I post all the links at the bottom. He does these 3-minute clips. He's awesome. And again, liberal. He's an old school liberal, people. Liberal card holder. Tore up his card like Dan Mateague and a lot of the real liberals did. They tore up their cards because they saw what the party had become. They're not socialists. They're not socialists. They don't want no part of this. The media doesn't want you to see this.
What is the primary reason that BC Ferries decided to award the contract to a state-owned shipyard in the People's Republic of China?
Chair, the evaluation criteria that we use to assess bids from yards around the world looks at a combination of factors, including technical capabilities, delivery timelines, safety, commitment to quality, and also cost. So we use a combination of criteria to assess what is going to be the yard that can deliver the best value for British Columbians, and I hope that answers.
Do you
the
think
question.
Are the shipbuilding workers in the People's Republic of China better than the shipbuilding workers here in Canada?
Chair, what I'd say is the yard that we selected met very high standards for.
Is it higher than the ones here in Canada?
They met the same standards that we would apply to any yard, Chair, from any part of the world.
So to clarify, do the state-owned companies that employ these workers in China follow the same safety, labor, and environmental regulations as private companies and unions here in Canada?
Chair, what I can say, based on this particular procurement, is that...
That's kind of a yes or no question.
Chair, again, I'll try to answer the question. What I can say is that we assessed every yard against the same sets of standards for quality, safety, environmental standards, and this yard met the high bar that we set for ourselves, whether we're working domestically or internationally.
Do shipyards in the People's Republic of China pay their workers the same as the shipyards here in Canada?
Chair, I think the member would have to ask the shipyards themselves.
It's a pretty easy question, I think.
Likely the answer is no.
I think so. So would you acknowledge that we are essentially bankrolling the offshoring of critical shipbuilding jobs to an adversarial regime because they are willing to pay their workers less and have them work in worse and lower safety and environmental and labor conditions?
What I'd say, Chair, is that we...
Crazy considering it's going to be built out of Chinese steel, forged from coal. Zero environmental standards. Everything this man is saying right now is lies. But listen carefully because he doesn't actually answer questions. He's just like a liberal. This is going to burst wide open, like Dan had mentioned. There is more to this than meets the eye. I'm digging. I found a lot of already quite interesting material. I'm hoping that Sam Cooper and a few of these other fabulous journalists with more expertise and a lot better connections can actually get at some of these documents to expose not only EB's government, which we know is corrupted by the CCP, they've been completely infiltrated by China, but our Liberal Party, who just, threw another $1 billion at the infrastructure bank, which is owned by China, ran by China. And again, 11 MPs within the federal party that are put in power by China. This is going to be huge, people.
We settled on a shipyard that is bringing significant value to British Columbians and making sure that the system that we're supposed to be running delivers, safe, reliable, and affordable ferry service. And key part of our renewal program.
C-SPAN said that they would have liked to build these ships. That's correct.
Chair, C-SPAN has been very public in saying that they were not able to participate in this program because they had no
based
capacity.
off of how you formulated, they express interest. So that it's true that you formulated in the contract in a way where C-SPAN was unable to build. And one of the things that you mentioned was the fact that you needed these ships right away, that we didn't have enough time. And you made a good point, but I was looking into it, and the oldest ships that you have in service, correct me if maybe the C-class, 30, 40 years old, where you're going to depreciate them over a large period of time, and presumably the forecast for passenger growth would have been well known. So why are you scrambling to purchase ships here at the last minute when we should have known for decades, and we could have incorporated the acquisition of these ferries into a proper shipbuilding strategy to ensure that we're building that important industrial capacity here in Canada, creating Canadian jobs in shipbuilding, in steel and aluminum production, instead of waiting at the last minute to use it as an excuse so we can go buy them on the cheap from the People's Republic of China, creating jobs in that country instead of our own.
Maybe because there was an election in both BC and federally, and it's payback time?
Chair, there's a number of things that I'm going to take issue with in the members' questions because they're just not...
Oh, please take issue. Please.
Correct. Well, first I'll start with that this program and the age of our ships is very well known and has been known for a very long time. We actually started this process 8 years ago before the pandemic and had to shut it down during that time. And at that time, we were very public, attending industry conferences every year, putting out a 20-year view of what our shipbuilding needs look like. So the industry was very well aware of where we were at and where we were going. The other thing that the member mentioned was somehow that we excluded...
Oh, this guy, he's so full of crap.
A Quebec shipyard is slamming BC Ferries for stacking the odds against Canadian companies when it comes to building its four newest ships. BC Ferries went with a Chinese state-owned shipbuilding company. It says no Canadian companies bid, and it would have cost $1 billion more to go with a European shipbuilder. That decision and the $1 billion federal loan BC Ferries received to finance the purchase is now being scrutinized by a House of Commons Transport Committee. In a letter to the committee's vice chair, the CEO of Davie Shipyard, the country's oldest and largest shipbuilding company, wrote that the procurement criteria were heavily weighted towards the lowest price, effectively favoring Chinese shipyards. He added that no Canadian or Western shipyard can compete with state subsidies for Chinese shipyards. As well.
Now, we have unlimited, untapped power. Can't be used, costs too much, putting these companies completely out of ever being able to be competitive with most other countries, let alone China. We have the most regulated systems. Top 5 countries in the world. Socialism, isn't it great? We are one of the highest taxed nations on earth. Now, how do you pay people a livable wage? Well, considering they're losing half of their paycheck to taxes, that means you got to pay them a lot more. China? Nope. What about all of the protocols and safety? Don't forget environmental protections and regulations that all of these other countries don't have to use. Canada. Oh my God. This is ridiculous. In the meantime, Trump is building what? 30 brand new dock areas for building ships. 5 huge companies they have already started building the actual docks and yards to start building ships while their energy prices are falling because he needs affordability. And what is he doing? He's tariffing because he needs good, reliable, and he wants it built in the States. Steel, aluminum, and copper. Because of propaganda, because of the outside influence, Canada's naivety and sheer ignorance, and really niceness, I guess you could call it niceness. I like to say laziness for the most part, because most Canadians it's natural for us to be nice. We used to be. Not like that anymore. Liberals are just the most sour people out there. All of this is where we could have been 60 years ago. But because of the Laurentian elite, because of the complete ignorance and hate spewed on television, CRTC controlled television, as well as, don't forget, what party has ruled Canada the longest? That'd be the Liberals. Now, I'm not saying that all Liberals are bad in the past. There were some good ones. I've always liked Amateague. I thought he was great. Even when he was running and he was in office, he was great. He really was. He's still not, to me, a perfect politician because I'm a libertarian. But it's all of these regulations and taxes. When is World War I actually going to be over so we don't have to pay taxes anymore? Because that was the whole excuse. We didn't need any of this. Now, I'm not saying that, especially with the technologies we have and the niceness of being Canadian, that we shouldn't pay a small percentage of tax to help out those unfortunate. But you can't uplift people by just gifting them free money and enabling them. And now we're in a society where if you take a look at the numbers, the taxpayers are almost outvoted. If anything, and it's hard to find the stats, are outvoted by those who just collect and take. They're the ones who are controlling the elections. Canada's doomed. We're doomed.
Well as low wages, weak environmental standards, and minimal labor protections. BC Ferry CEO Nicholas Jimenez was not available for an interview. A spokesperson disputed Davie Shipyard's characterization of the bidding process. He says price was only a secondary factor in the bids, with shipyard technical considerations making up more than half of the evaluation. BC Ferries also says Canadian content was a factor, as well as safety and environmental standards. China has now imposed a new 75...
How could any of that be true? It's all lies. It's all lies. All of it.
He's all talk and no action. Things are not different. They are getting worse. And there's more trouble ahead. Mark Carney's promised to ban your gas, truck, and car, which a ban that begins phasing in just months from today. It will kill jobs, balloon costs, and grind rural communities to a halt. Farmers, ranchers, resource workers would not be able to do their jobs because EVs don't work over long distances and in cold weather. It would literally erase many small towns from the map. Now, a lot of people will say that is hyperbole, but I asked the farmers here today, could the rural communities across the prairies actually continue to go on if they had to drive exclusively electric vehicles? Could that run on an electric battery? How could you move your grain to markets? How could you do the regular work that's required to have a pickup truck in minus 40-degree weather in February? It is simply not possible. What Mark Carney was doing by banning gas vehicles is he is banning the rural way of life. Communities across West.
He is. That's the goal. That's the goal. Just like what they did with milk. It was the first start to remove homesteaders because it took away a vital part of the circle needed in order for homesteaders to be completely self-sufficient. They don't want you to be self-sufficient. They need you to be suckling on the teat of the government. This is socialism. The rich get richer, the poor get poorer. This is all the same thing. They're just doing it in another tactical way. Nothing is going to change. Nothing's going to change. In the meantime, here's a reality check.
No, the government is broke, right? I mean, look, interest charges on the federal debt alone are costing taxpayers more than $1 billion every week. Well, what's $1 billion, right? That's a brand new hospital that is not getting built every single week because the government is so broke and so in debt, and all that money is going to interest charges, right? Think about it this way, all right? Think about this every time you're at the cashier, right, waiting to check out. Well, every dollar you paid in federal sales tax last year went to pay interest charges on the debt. So the government is absolutely broke. I mean, think about the billions of dollars that the government is going to put taxpayers on the hook for the subsidies, for all the new infrastructure, for all the new transmission lines, right? I mean, look, the government has already put taxpayers on the hook for about $30 billion in corporate welfare to multinational corporations like Honda, Volkswagen, Stellantis, and Northvolt so they can build EV battery factories. And that's just the federal government, right? Let alone the Ontario government, some of the other provincial governments who are getting into the corporate welfare game. And you know, we mentioned that Natural Resource Canada report, where the total cost of this could be up to $300 billion. Like, think about the electricity or the power requirements for this, Chris. We had an op-ed in the Toronto Sun about this a little while ago where we talk about, you know, Canada would need, 14 large nuclear reactors to power all those electric vehicles? Like, the only silver lining from this absolutely crazy idea, this ban, the only silver lining is that it's so crazy, it might not even be possible, right?
It's not possible. Canada's destroyed. This is the finishing touches. Ontario, you really need to listen. You really gotta get away from your union goof leaders. You need to actually step back, get your head out of the propaganda, and start really paying attention to what's going on. This. Auto industry warned Carney EV mandates hurt consumers and job. This is the letter they sent out. This is a quote upon the letter. Despite being warned months ago to repeal the federal government's zero-emission vehicle sales mandate by industry leaders, Prime Minister Mark Carney has still failed to act as sales continue to plummet. Carney was warned that refusing to repeal the mandate would have an industry-wide negative impact. The letter was signed by the CEOs of Ford, General Motors, Honda, Toyota, and Stellantis on May 26. If the mandate is not urgently repealed, it will inflict serious damage on automakers, the dealership network, and the hundreds of thousands of Canadians employed in the sector. Again, I'll attach this. If you know an auto worker, share the video with them. He has access to these documents because their unions aren't telling him. And again, I exposed this on previous episodes. I was warning people about this before the election. I was trying to get the auto, the steel, the aluminum sectors to be aware of what was going on. What would happen if they elected another Liberal government? Not enough people are not enough independent media who are speaking truth to power are getting heard. This is Canadian censorship, by the way. I get censored hardcore. Everybody else, they mute out all the words. They edit it. I don't do that. I want the truth. I'm talking to adults. Adults should be treated as adults. And I'm also a libertarian. I believe what's good for the goose is good for the gander. If CBC can say these words on YouTube, I should have that right too. That's true freedom of speech. But that's not what we have, because YouTube has to follow the liberal government censorship that I fight every single episode. Now, this is a letter from the mayors. The auto mayors call on Mark Carney to repeal the electric ban. Again, I will share this as well. Believe there was over 50 of them that got on this and signed it, begging him, you are going to decimate the auto sector, crush the auto sector. What are cars made out of? Think carefully. Steel and aluminum and full of copper. You haven't just shot yourself in the foot, Ontario. You literally have rested the gun on your lap and pointed it straight up. And you're pulling the trigger slowly. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe and get this out there. Because like I said, I personally have talked to people within the industry on other apps and social media I'm part of who were arguing with me about this, refused to read it. And a few of them that did were in shock and awe, because that's not what their union representatives were telling them. Instead, they fear-mongered. Oh, the Conservatives are evil. The ones trying to protect your jobs, the ones trying to protect Canadians. Are they my favorite party? No. I'm a libertarian. But I know that in order for us to get rid of the Liberals, we needed to vote Conservatives. And be honest, Pierre is a breath of fresh air when it comes to leaders in Canada. He could actually make Canada into something we should have been generations ago.
Oh, hi. Jeremy Warren from CBC Saskatchewan here. My question's about canola tariffs. And, should Canada reduce or repeal its tariffs on Chinese electric vehicles if it would help reduce Chinese tariffs on canola? And what kind of support should the federal government be providing canola producers?
Well, first of all, let's recognize that China's tariffs on our canola producers are totally unjustified. They had already targeted our beef producers before there were any electric vehicle tariffs imposed on them. So the Chinese government has mistreated our economy for many years. I believe the first thing we should do is cancel the $1 billion federal loan that Mark Carney is extending to BC Ferries to have them buy Chinese ships. Mark Carney is giving $1 billion of shipbuilding contracts through a taxpayer-funded loan to the Chinese government and the Chinese economy. That is crazy. At a time when they're targeting our farmers, I think we should look at ways we can penalize the regime in Beijing for targeting our farmers. And so far, Mark Carney has said nothing about the canola producers. It's like he doesn't care about Western Canadian producers. You know, I had my team check his Twitter account. He hasn't tweeted a single thing about canola, yet he's been able to tweet about International Cat Day.
Now, proof is in the pudding. Let's take a look. Carney's X account. Here it is right here. More Trump hate. Lots of this is what he pushes. Fear, hate, and division. Using his propaganda and sound bites and video clips to push this message to all of the libtards out there. Oh, I said it. Sorry. A lot of them are brainwashed. They need to see this. What happens right after this press conference? Mark Carney posted, I spoke yesterday with that Premier Scott Moe about China's preliminary dumping duties on, I'm not even going to read it to you. It's all bullcrap. All of it. All of it. Before that, back to his gonna make Canada great. Liberals are the only way to do it. Unleash the power. We've done more. We're gonna do more. He's done nothing. He's done zilch, nada. Keep going. Nothing. Oh, I've had the opportunity to meet and learn from First Nations and Métis. Oh yeah, kiss ass. Looking for votes, sell, push through more propaganda. The shame of what APTN has gone. I used to watch APTN all the time. I'm a big fan. Hey, it's part of my roots. I can't do it. I can't do it. Now I use it as another stooge for propaganda because that's what it's become. It's become a complete fascist network. It's disgusting. Very few programs. In fact, I don't watch it enough anymore to actually catch a lot of the little language things that I would normally watch to try and rekindle a lot of the languages that have been taken that I'd love to relearn. I can't. Why? Because the channel is lost. It's lost. But don't worry, they're right involved. They're kissing all the NDP liberal socialist butts. And I keep going. Here it is. All right, the leaders of the coalition of the willing to discuss our ongoing support of Ukraine. Yep. Oh yeah. And it goes on, and it goes on, and it goes on. Nothing about the West. Nothing about the fisheries. Nothing. Nothing. Nada. Fear, hate, and division. All propaganda. Polyev isn't lying. He's telling you the truth. It's all there. In the meantime, don't forget, this is how Carney feels about the West.
Thank you. And as a follow-up, could I get your reaction to the jobs reports, loss of 41,000 jobs, worse than expected? Thank you.
Sure. A couple of things. One is that obviously we look very closely at developments in the labor market. We had a very strong job report in June, over 80,000 jobs created. We now have the July jobs reduction of just over 40,000. What's interesting about, if you look across those areas, the geographic spread is in the July report is more in Western Canada. It's in Alberta and Saskatchewan. Less in the manufacturing sectors where we will expect.
He doesn't care. And guess what? The only reason is because out east, they are so brainwashed. They have no idea of the carnage Carney is going to inflict on Ontario. But Quebec is aware of it. Quebec is on the ball. Don't forget.
Do you think that's acceptable for Canada now that Mark Carney has seemingly opened the door for it? And if that happens, should we retaliate as a country with our own tariffs?
When he said that, Mr. Carney said that there would probably be some tariffs left after an agreement. He just mentioned something obvious. I said during the campaign and after that next free trade agreement would be less free than before. But we must keep in mind that even under precedent treaty, still active, there were tariffs, there were restrictions, there were some policies to protect the American market by the American government. So we must make it as little as possible, and we must try.
He got busted. He got busted. Because he's the one who has been forcing Canada, and he's one of the main reasons with the milk cartel that Canada is in the position it is today. It's Quebec's protectionism that has destroyed our country. They have been the main key of locking Canada out of our own prosperity. And they refuse to give it up. But guess what? Good news is on the horizon.
And joining us now to discuss tonight's by-election win for the PQ in Arthabaska riding is political analyst Raphael Melançon. So Raphael, another big win for the PQ, third in a row now.
Third in a row, Caroline. Out of the 4 by-elections we have held in Quebec, in the province, since the last general election in 2022, the PQ has won 3 out of 4 of them. So very important victory yet again tonight for the PQ, because it seems like it's confirming its position as the #1 political force in Quebec right now. And the timing of it couldn't be better for the PQ leader, Paul Saint-Pierre Plamondon, because we're just a year ahead of the next general election in Quebec, unless, of course, François Legault chooses to have an earlier election. We are set to have an election here in the province, a general election.
3 out of 4 seats won by a nice margin by the Separatist Party.
Reboot his party after his candidate lost the Arthabaska riding on Monday. For François Legault, it is more than losing a seat at the National Assembly. It is a signal of Quebecers' discontent with his government.
Je suis vraiment à l'étape humilité et écoute.
To take François Legault's own words, he's practicing humility and he wants to listen more from now on. He spent some time with Quebecers in Quebec City and no media were allowed. The goal was to listen to what they had to say and rebuild trust.
Vous avez l'air en grande forme. Ben oui.
Legault also met his ministers ahead of his cabinet shuffle, probably after Labor Day. Now the question is, will that be enough to change the public sentiment towards his party?
There's one thing that François Legault has been good at during his political career, and it's capturing the mood. And
he's done. Quebec separatism is on the rise. They're ready to go. They're done. And now here's the benefit it has to Canada. These are the 2025 election results. In Quebec, this is what these socialists voted for. These are the same people who are voting to separate now. Do you understand how brainwashed they are? 43 seats went to the Liberals. 43 seats. Think about that. Now, take that away from the Conservatives at 11. We would have a majority Conservative party. Because the Bloc, they don't even matter anymore. Those votes would be irrelevant. Once Quebec leaves, all of these seats are gone. All of a sudden, it gives power back to the rural areas. It tips the balance a little wee bit better in favor of a more equilibrious society. Now, they can't make it. There is no logistics there is no economist in their right mind that could sit down and give any fundamental math showing that Quebec could secede and actually survive. They're done. So don't let the door hit you on the way out. But the best part about this, and now there's a lot of different people who are like, oh, well, they're going to go first. Who cares? Let them go first. There are a lot of people who are worried. They're going, oh, if they go first, then we're not going to leave because they're going to. The balance is already going to be tipped a little bit less in socialists' favor. But by then, all of the policies, the sheer destruction that's occurring to Canada will be complete. It'll be a wake-up call. And hopefully, I mean, I still think Saskatchewan and Alberta should leave because it's just, we'd be just so much better. We're just so much better. And it would put a reality check into what's left of Canada. And once they realize that, well, either they would sign a union back with us or they would join the states. This is why I keep saying the Liberals have created the 51st state. The media lying about all of this, that it's Trump. It's not Trump, it's business. It's all business. The Liberals destroyed Canada. With the help of propaganda, they just remained in power and they're going to try and finish what they're doing. But the problem is now they're all caught in a rock and a hard place. because all of their prior investments, their scheming, they finally realized they've been used. They were too stupid. They were too greedy to actually see the truth. When you get into government, it's called self-sacrifice. You can't look at profit for yourself, because if you do, your country will fall, which is where we are today, because of greed. And the socialistic ideology that was used to promote it was sucked into all of the schools. And now we have a generation we need to fix, a generation and a little bit, that we need to cure of this insanity. The world is going to end tomorrow. I've lived through 7 or more of these. We were going to freeze, we were going to burn, we were going to flood, They're all lies. They're all lies. When Mother Earth decides she's going to let out a big belch, she'll do it on her own time. There's nothing we can do to stop it. When the sun says, hey, I'm going to let out a big belch, it is what it is. Our job is to survive, to try to remain free, equal, and be human, be civilized. And this government has destroyed every single aspect of that. They've removed it from what it was to be Canadianism. That is my episode for today, guys. I'm a little bit long. I apologize. But again, I just wanted to get all that out. There's a few more stories I did want to dabble on, but I'll have to save that for another episode. I hope you enjoyed today's episode. If you have, please like, share, and subscribe. If you have, punch the notification bell. Not only helps grow the channel, you won't miss any previous episodes you won't miss any next episodes. You can support us by buying our clothing or merch on the on my store, which some of the products are linked below. Also, the link to the actual store is there. I am still working. I'm just starting to get back here health-wise. I'll get all this rest of this new clothing released. Until the next time, you guys. I'm Alias to Guy. You've been watching Canadian Citizen Journal. Stay informed.